Ever wonder if TV execs in the 1960s were just tossing wild ideas at a wall to see what stuck? Welcome to the Forgotten Flops, shows so bizarre and baffling they didn't just miss the mark, they left viewers speechless. Which of these disasters did your family endure? Get ready to question everything you know about classic television. My Mother the Car, 1965. Some TV shows just boggle the mind, and My Mother the Car is in a class of its own. Picture this. Jerry Van Dyke stars as Dave Crabtree, an ordinary guy who discovers his late mother isn't haunting the attic. She's reincarnated as a 1928 Porter automobile. Not only that, but she communicates through the car's radio, doling out advice and nagging him about his life choices every time he tries to take a drive. The premise alone sounds like something dreamed up after a late-night brainstorming session gone way off the rails. NBC thought they had a quirky hit, aiming for family-friendly magic like Bewitched or Mr. Ed. What they got was a surreal mess. Each week, Dave tried to hide his talking car secret from his family and friends, leading to outlandish situations and desperate attempts at comedy. Critics didn't hold back, calling it one of the most bizarre misfires in TV history. Even Van Dyke later joked about how weird the whole thing was. Viewers tuned in out of curiosity, but the novelty quickly wore off and so did the audience. The jokes leaned hard on the absurd premise, and when that wore thin, there wasn't much left to laugh at. My Mother the Car limped through just one season, earning a reputation as a gold standard for TV flops. Decades later, it's still cited as a cautionary tale. Just because you can pitch the wildest idea in the room doesn't mean you should. The Tammy Grimes Show, 1966. If you blinked in the fall of 1966, you probably missed The Tammy Grimes Show, because almost everyone did. Broadway's own Tammy Grimes was handed a sitcom all about her zany, scatterbrained heiress character, Tamantha Ward. She was rich, eccentric, and supposedly irresistible to trouble, setting up weekly escapades involving mistaken identities, money mishaps, and frantic attempts to outwit her stodgy relatives. But the magic that made Grimes a star on stage evaporated under the sitcom lights. The writers clearly had no clue how to translate her theatrical energy to the TV screen, and every episode played like a slapstick sketch with no punchline. Supporting actors looked perpetually puzzled, and even Grimes often seemed one step away from making a break for the exit. The reviews were downright brutal. Critics called it a bewildering miscalculation, unfunny, and painfully out of step. The jokes fell flat, the pacing dragged, and no amount of Broadway charm could disguise the lack of substance. ABC pulled the plug after just 4 episodes, the kind of move reserved for only the most catastrophic failures. Today, The Tammy Grimes Show survives as a trivia punchline. Even die-hard TV buffs struggle to remember it ever existed. It's a reminder that network suits sometimes bet big on the wrong horse. In this case, the only thing remarkable about the show was how fast it disappeared, vanishing into TV history almost before anyone knew it was there. It's About Time, 1966-1967. Television in the 1960s loved high concepts, but sometimes those ideas spun wildly out of control. Case in point, It's About Time. Dreamed up by Sherwood Schwartz, the mind behind Gilligan's Island, this sitcom followed 2 astronauts who travel back in time and crash land in the Stone Age. There, they encounter a clan of cave people with perfectly modern haircuts and accents, who react to the new arrivals with confusion and comic misunderstandings. Every episode relied on wacky then versus now gags, cavemen baffled by wristwatches, astronauts trying to invent basic technology, and endless goofy mishaps. At first, audiences were curious, but the time travel shtick got old fast. Even the show's catchy theme song, "It's About Time, It's About Space, About 2 men in the strangest place," became a running joke among viewers. When the ratings tanked, the producers pulled a desperate U-turn. Suddenly, the astronauts brought the entire cave family back to the 1960s, flipping the fish-out-of-water premise on its head. But instead of saving the series, it just confused the audience further. The storylines became more outlandish, and the show lost any sense of logic or fun. After just one chaotic season, It's About Time was canceled, its title living on as a perfect punchline for anyone waiting for the axe to fall. It's a textbook case of a good idea going completely off the rails, proof that even TV's biggest names can crash and burn when they try to out-weird themselves. Turn On 1969? Some shows take years to flop. Turn On managed it in under an hour. This so-called groundbreaking sketch comedy debuted on ABC with a mission to outcool and out-weird Laugh-In. The result? A blinding blur of rapid-fire experimental sketches, computer-generated graphics, and punchlines that seemed to have been written by someone who'd never heard an actual joke. The network pushed the envelope, no laugh track, barely any plot, and a visual style that looked more like a technical glitch than intentional design. Instead of engaging viewers, it left them dazed and irritated. In some cities, affiliate stations actually pulled the plug during the premiere episode, leaving viewers staring at static or emergency broadcasts. In others, the phones lit up with complaints. Turn-On's debut was so disastrous that ABC immediately canceled the show, never airing a second episode. Industry insiders have called it the shortest-lived primetime series ever, a what-were-they-thinking lesson in TV history. The fallout was so embarrassing, even the people involved rarely talk about it. In a single evening, Turn On went from next big thing to never speak of this again. Today, the show has become the stuff of legend, a cautionary tale about chasing trends too hard and leaving the audience in the dust. If you want to see how fast a big idea can crash and burn, Turn On is the ultimate example. Sometimes, you only need half an episode to make TV history for all the wrong reasons. The Puits of Southampton, 1966-1967. You'd think a show starring the legendary Phyllis Diller as a broke socialite hiding her family's financial ruin would be sitcom gold. The Puits of Southampton, later renamed The Phyllis Diller Show, had all the ingredients: sharp social satire, snobby neighbors, IRS agents, and one of comedy's most distinctive voices. But the series never figured out its own personality. Each week, Diller's character, Phyllis Pruitt, desperately juggled keeping up appearances while navigating a house full of freeloading relatives and prying townsfolk. The show wanted to be a farce about upper-crust living gone wrong, a gentle comedy about family, and a sly wink at the audience all at once. Instead, it turned into a jumble of half-hearted gags and aimless plots. Even Diller's signature one-liners couldn't inject enough life. Critics complained that the writing wasted its star and failed to make good on the show's promise. Viewers agreed, and the ratings flatlined quickly. Producers tried a mid-season rebrand, but not even a name change could save this slow-motion train wreck. The Puits of Southampton ended after one season, quietly buried and barely remembered. It's a reminder, sometimes, even when you put a comedy legend behind the wheel, the engine just won't start. The only legacy is a spot on every biggest TV flops list and a lesson for sitcom creators everywhere. If you don't know what kind of show you are, nobody else will either. The Baileys of Balboa, 1964-1965. You know a sitcom's in trouble when its entire premise feels like a knockoff from the start. That's exactly what happened with the Baileys of Balboa. CBS, eager to capitalize on the success of Gilligan's Island, greenlit this coastal comedy about a blue-collar charter boat family butting heads with their rich, snobby neighbors on Balboa Island. Each episode tried to wring laughs from the clash between working-class grit and yacht club glamour, but the scripts were so formulaic, the only thing that sank faster than the Bailey's boat was the show's ratings. Every week, the same tired scenarios. A wild scheme goes wrong, the rich folks get their comeuppance, the Baileys save the day, and nobody at home laughs. The actors did their best, but it was hard to hide the sense that everyone was just biding their time until the next audition. Even the beach setting, supposedly a guaranteed draw, couldn't rescue a show with zero personality. CBS quietly yanked the Baileys of Balboa after a single season, letting it drift into TV obscurity. In the end, this is one shipwreck nobody remembers fondly. The Baileys of Balboa is a lesson for TV history. Not every idea that works once is worth repeating. Sometimes it's better to just leave the copycat scripts stranded on the dock. Camp Runnuk, 1965-1966. If you ever spent a summer at camp and thought, this is chaos, Camp Runnuk tried to turn that experience into comedy gold. What audiences got instead was pure bedlam. The show followed two rival summer camps, one for boys, one for girls, filled with over-the-top slapstick, misbehaving counselors, and non-stop pranks. NBC wanted another hit like McHale's Navy, but what they got was a mess that even kids found exhausting. Every episode felt like a sugar rush gone wrong. Food fights, paint bombs, ridiculous misunderstandings, and adults acting sillier than the kids. The jokes were so broad, they could barely squeeze into the cabins. By the time the credits rolled, even viewers needed a nap. Camp Runnuk was canceled after just one season, leaving audiences and the network relieved that summer camp was finally over. Turns out, too much wackiness isn't always a good thing. The Tammy TV series 1965-1966. Spinning off from a handful of light-hearted films, the Tammy TV series hoped to charm viewers with homespun wholesomeness. Debbie Watson played Tammy, a sweet country girl tossed into city life with her eccentric relatives. NBC imagined it would be a fish-out-of-water hit, loaded with cute accents and feel-good misadventures. Unfortunately, syrupy scripts and tired country cliches left viewers longing for something with a little more bite. Week after week, Tammy's good intentions clashed with the hustle and bustle of the modern world, but the stories never caught fire. The series leaned so hard into down-home values that it forgot to deliver genuine laughs or surprises. Despite Watson's likability, the show just couldn't compete with fresher, funnier sitcoms. Ratings sputtered and NBC pulled the plug before Tammy could find her happy ending. Sometimes all the southern charm in the world can't save a show that's stuck in neutral. Mr. Terrific 1967. What happens when TV tries to cash in on the superhero craze without any of the magic? You get Mr. Terrific, NBC's answer to the question nobody asked. Stephen Strimple played Stanley Beamish, a mild-mannered gas station attendant who gained superpowers from a government-issued power pill. The twist? His powers lasted only an hour, and so did most people's patience. Mr. Terrific was supposed to be a wacky spoof on heroes, but the execution was clumsy and the jokes painfully predictable. Instead of thrilling rescues, viewers got endless slapstick and awkward attempts at humor. Even the special effects felt like a parody. Critics tore it apart, and fans of real superhero stories tuned out in droves. The show limped through one season before NBC called it quits, leaving Stanley and his power pills gathering dust in TV's forgotten closet. Turns out, not every hero is meant to save the day or the ratings. The New People 1969-1970. If you thought reality TV invented the idea of dumping strangers on an island and watching them struggle, think again. The New People was way ahead of its time, stranding a plane load of college students on a deserted Pacific island. With no adults, these kids were supposed to build a new society from scratch, a setup with serious drama potential. Unfortunately, what ABC delivered was a moody, slow-moving soap with too many characters and not enough excitement. The cast wrestled with deep topics, leadership, survival, ethics, but viewers just wanted some actual adventure. Ratings never took off, and ABC pulled the plug after only 17 episodes. The New People is now a footnote in TV history, remembered more for its failed ambition than its storytelling. It's proof that sometimes even a great idea can get lost at sea without the right map. The Hathaways 1961 to 1962. Let's get this out of the way. The Hathaways was a sitcom about a couple raising 3 chimpanzees. Yes, actual apes. ABC tried to sell this as heartwarming family comedy, starring Jack Weston and Peggy Cass as the human parents of a trio of showbiz chimps. The premise sounded wacky, but the execution was even stranger. Every episode revolved around training mishaps, household chaos, and the never-ending struggle to keep the neighbors from finding out they had primates living next door. The big problem? No one could relate, not even kids. The slapstick was tired, the jokes were forced, and the chimps often upstaged their human co-stars, not in a good way. Even ABC admitted later it was a disaster, quietly canceling the show after one painful season. The Hathaways proved some sitcom ideas belong in the jungle, not on primetime TV. The Ugliest Girl in Town, 1968-1969. Sometimes you find a show so bizarre you wonder how anyone ever approved it. The Ugliest Girl in Town followed a struggling Hollywood actor who disguises himself as his own sister to work as a British fashion model. What could possibly go wrong? Well, just about everything. Week after week, audiences cringed through mistaken identity hijinks, terrible wigs, and gags that aged about as well as a carton of milk left in the sun. ABC hoped the far-out concept would set the ratings on fire, but viewers ran the other way. The humor was awkward, the plot stretched thin, and even the lead actor seemed lost in all the costume changes. The show's short run became a punchline for TV critics and a cautionary tale for future cross-dressing comedies. In the end, The Ugliest Girl in Town proved there are some disguises even a laugh track can't hide. Mr. Broadway 1964. CBS was certain it had a smash with Mr. Broadway, a slick drama starring Craig Stevens as a New York public relations whiz who could fix any problem with style and charm. The concept promised big city glamour, showbiz intrigue, and high-stakes deals on the Great White Way. But after a few episodes, audiences realized there was more sparkle in a puddle on 42nd Street than in this entire series. The writing couldn't keep up with the flashy setting. Plots dragged, characters were paper-thin, and the drama fell flat. Critics called it style over substance, and viewers agreed. The show fizzled out after just 13 episodes. Mr. Broadway is a classic example of a network falling in love with an idea that looked good on paper but had no real heart. Sometimes you just can't fake excitement. Hank 1965-1966. Here's a recipe for TV confusion. Take one broke but ambitious young man, have him secretly attend college classes under false identities, and mix in a revolving door of wacky schemes to avoid getting caught. NBC thought Hank would tap into the youth market, but instead, it baffled viewers. Star Dick Coleman did his best to make Hank lovable, but every episode felt like a test nobody wanted to take. Despite a creative premise, the show's tone jumped all over the map. Was it a comedy about campus life or a drama about education? Audiences couldn't tell, and neither could the writers. By the time the show ended, the only lesson learned was that viewers want consistency, and maybe a few characters they actually root for. Hank graduated straight to TV obscurity, diploma not included. Accidental Family, 1967-1968. When NBC needed another odd couple sitcom, they doubled down with Accidental Family, a show about as natural as pairing peanut butter with pickles. Imagine this. Jerry Van Dyke, playing a struggling Las Vegas comic, finds himself suddenly sharing a home with Lois Nettleton's character, a practical farm widow, and her young son. Why? Financial desperation. The two polar opposites are forced into one household, hoping their completely different backgrounds will spark laughs and warm fuzzies. Spoiler, it didn't. The humor was so forced, you could almost hear the scriptwriters sighing behind each punchline. Van Dyke mugged and quipped for the camera, but he looked more lost than lovably goofy. The supposed sparks between city slicker and farm gal never truly ignited, and even the farm animals on set seemed more interested in lunch than in the dialogue. The series never picked a lane. Was it a modern family show about blended lives, a rural fish-out-of-water story, or just a long, slow commercial for fresh eggs and tractor rides? NBC didn't know, and audiences didn't stick around to find out. Ratings plummeted, viewers tuned out, and the show was quietly canceled after only 16 episodes. Today, Accidental Family is a trivia question for die-hard TV historians and a warning to networks everywhere. Just because you can mash two ideas together doesn't mean you should. Sometimes the only thing accidental is thinking lightning can strike twice in the sitcom world. The Hero 1966-1967. Ever watch a sitcom about making a sitcom and feel like you're stuck in a never-ending in-joke? That's The Hero, a show where Richard Mulligan played Sam Garrett, a television hero who's actually neurotic and uncertain behind the scenes. NBC was sure that viewers wanted a self-aware comedy about Hollywood, but in practice, it played like a private joke nobody bothered to explain. Every week, the story revolved around Sam fumbling his way through showbiz mishaps while struggling with insecurity and public expectations. Mulligan, who would later become beloved for Soap and Empty Nest, tried his best to sell the part. But there's only so much charm you can squeeze from a script that's more awkward than amusing. The humor often depended on inside industry references, making most of America feel like they'd wandered into the wrong club. Critics called out the limp storylines and the lack of true comic punch, while audiences just tuned out. There was no real tension, no real laughs, just a lot of anxious glances and showbiz cliches. NBC realized pretty quickly that they'd missed the mark, quietly shelving The Hero after one forgettable season. In the end, the only thing this show was a hero at was making a fast exit from the TV schedule, leaving almost no trace behind except a warning label. Not every industry parody is built for prime time. The Cara Show, 1964-1965. Network execs in the 1960s seemed obsessed with recapturing the magic of Lucy, and the Cara Williams show is a classic example of that ambition crashing into reality. Cara Williams starred as a perky, quick-witted secretary who secretly marries her coworker, played by Franca Letter, at a company where workplace romance is strictly forbidden. The premise set the stage for a parade of madcap schemes and frantic cover-ups as the couple dodged bosses and nosy colleagues while pretending to be single at work. On paper, it sounded like a recipe for laughs. But the magic never showed up. The chemistry between the leads was stiff, and the comedy rarely hit its mark. Every episode was a marathon of misunderstandings and slapstick situations that felt recycled even in the 1960s. Even Williams, known for her comedic spark, seemed trapped by repetitive gags and weak scripts. CBS had high hopes for another sitcom juggernaut, but what they got was a pale imitation that didn't even crack a smile. Viewers quickly lost interest, and the show disappeared after a single season, fading into the long list of almost, but not quite, TV experiments. The Cara Williams show is proof that you need more than a plucky lead and a clever setup to deliver a real TV hit, especially when the audience has already seen it all before. Rango, 1967. By the late 1960s, the TV Western was basically riding into the sunset, but that didn't stop NBC from saddling up with Rango. The network banked on the slapstick genius of Tim Conway, fresh off his McHale's Navy success, to revive a genre gasping for air. Conway played Rango, a hopelessly clumsy Texas Ranger, constantly bungling assignments, tripping over his own boots, and getting into scrapes that made the Old West look more like a playground. NBC hoped that packing the show with pratfalls, goofy faces, and endless chaos would be enough to wrangle in viewers. Instead, what audiences got was a parade of tired gags, flimsy plots, and side characters as memorable as tumbleweeds. The writing leaned so hard into slapstick that any hope for character or story got lost in the dust. Even Conway's famous knack for physical comedy couldn't save Rango from the quicksand of bad scripts. Audiences didn't stick around, and critics quickly dismissed the show as a lazy rehash of jokes from a different era. NBC pulled the plug after just 17 episodes, sending Rango to the same graveyard as countless other TV westerns. Conway rebounded in his career, but Rango remains a warning. Sometimes, not even comic gold can resurrect a dying trend or a show that was doomed from the start. Gidget, 1965-1966. Gidget is the classic example of a show that tanked on arrival, but later became a legend. The series introduced a teenage Sally Field as the energetic, surf-loving Gidget, eager to ride the waves and navigate the social scene of California's beaches and high schools. ABC banked on the Surf's Up craze, thinking Gidget would ride a wave of teen enthusiasm. Instead, the ratings sank almost instantly. Despite Field's infectious charm and energy, audiences just weren't ready for a sitcom about a girl surfer tackling coming-of-age dilemmas with humor and heart. Each episode balanced light romance, teenage rebellion, and sunny comedy. But the mix never quite landed with viewers in the mid-60s. The show's easygoing vibe and beachy fun may have been a bit ahead of its time, and the network pulled the plug after just one season. The irony? Reruns turned Gidget into a cult classic, sparking movies, sequels, and TV spin-offs in later years. Sally Field's big break might have flopped at first, but Gidget ultimately became proof that sometimes the best stories just need a little time to find their audience. In its day, though, it was the TV version of a surfboard wipeout. Captain Nice, 1967. With superheroes storming television in the late 1960s, NBC thought they could capture lightning in a bottle with Captain Nice. William Daniels starred as Carter Nash, a meek chemist who transforms into the titular hero thanks to a special serum. But his real struggle was getting out from under his overbearing mother's thumb. NBC pitched it as a campy superhero spoof, hoping to cash in on the Batman craze. What viewers got was a barrage of silly costumes, clumsy rescue attempts, and a never-ending parade of gags about laundry and motherly nagging. The problem? The jokes were so flat, even the laugh track sounded tired. The superhero parody angle was already wearing thin on TV, and Captain Nice brought nothing new to the party. Daniels tried to power through, giving his all to the role, but the show's one-note humor quickly wore out its welcome. Critics called it desperate, and audiences simply ignored it. After just one season, Captain Nice was gone, disappearing into the TV vault alongside a dozen other superhero wannabes. The big lesson here: in a world full of superheroes, you still need a little magic and a lot more wit to truly save the day. So, next time someone calls the 1960s the golden age of TV, just remember these spectacular wipeouts. For every hit, there were plenty of oddball disasters that crashed and burned, leaving us with wild stories and a graveyard of forgotten pilots. Which of these flops would you actually watch for the train wreck factor? Drop your pick below, hit subscribe, and keep exploring TV's weirdest corners with us. Who knows what we'll uncover next?